Hello everyone, today we will learn about another case. The case of Shirley and Duguay. Choosing a soulmate is a very important step because this person can become the love of your life or a real nightmare. Shirley and Duguay was born on October 11, 1962. She was a native of Prince Edward Island, born and raised in the smallest of the Canadian provinces. Regarding her early years, she grew up in a close, knit family with two sisters. They had a loving father who supported them and was family-oriented, a value he passed on to his daughters. By 1994, Shirley was a 32-year-old mother of 5 children, 2 of whom were from previous relationships. However, she was going through a serious crisis with her husband, Douglas Beamish, with whom she had been in a relationship for several years. Shirley worked hard and devoted the rest of her time to her children. This was very helpful to her. She never lost faith in herself or people and maintained a positive attitude, constantly communicating with relatives and friends who supported her in every possible way. She truly needed that support as she barely managed to finalize her divorce proceedings with Doug. A dispute over custody of the children arose during their relationship, which had become increasingly oppressive. Shirley repeatedly complained that she was a victim of domestic violence. People in her close circle often saw traces of beatings on her. Despite the cruelty of the relationship, she rejected any proposals to separate, believing that her husband would simply kill her if she tried to leave. Even when Shirley reached a boiling point, her husband managed to keep her from getting a divorce. She was financially dependent on him, emotionally depressed, and simply afraid she would not be able to cope with the children without his support. Unfortunately, as they aged, his aggression began to shift toward the younger generation. At this point, Shirley sought support from the state to combat domestic violence. The Canadian justice system treated problems within the family with much less attention than the situation required. Despite numerous threats, statements, and evidence of aggression, Shirley failed to achieve any prohibitions or restrictions against Douglas. Finally gathering her strength, Shirley filed for divorce and moved out with the children. Now, the most pressing issue was the division of custody rights. During this period, she had 5 children aged 8 to 15. She feared for their health and safety given her husband's behavior. As a result, she sought sole custody of her 3 youngest children, fearing that Douglas would take revenge and shift his anger onto them. She intended to limit his opportunities for supervised visitations to no more than once a week. Additionally, she was counting on alimony because raising 5 children alone would be too challenging. Though she was already receiving small payments for 2 children from a previous relationship, it was not enough. Shirley's intentions only fueled Doug's anger. By the fall of 1994, she repeatedly expressed fears for her life. Yet, despite everything, she continued to hope for the best and led a normal life. On October 7, 1994, a woman found an abandoned car on Highway 169, near Tyne Valley in rural Prince Edward Island. She couldn't specify how long it had been there since she had been away from home for several days. Upon her return, she immediately noticed a car parked oddly in the middle of a field. When she approached to offer help to the driver, her worry grew. The car had no license plates, and on the windshield, there were numerous small splashes resembling blood. There was no one near the car, so she quickly contacted the police. Upon receipt of report, the law enforcement officers arrived at the scene and confirmed that something terrible had possibly happened in the car. Inside, they found many bloodstains but no signs of a struggle or dragging nearby, suggesting it had been abandoned far from where a confrontation had taken place. Investigators wondered if the victim of such an attack could have survived. Due to the lack of license plates, identifying the car took longer. Eventually, detectives discovered it belonged to 32-year-old Shirley and Duguay. They tried to contact her, but to no avail, as her address was not known. They could only find her father and children. As it turned out, none of her relatives or friends had heard anything about her despite several police calls. Shirley had stopped responding to calls 4 days before the witness reported the abandoned car, approximately on October 3rd. It was normal for her to leave periodically for work, so during that entire time, no one suspected anything was wrong. No one could find the mother of the children's, leading the police to begin a search operation, considering Shirley might be in danger. Given the amount of blood in the cabin, it was evident that the attack had been committed with great cruelty. This was also indicated by the nature of the splashes, which were analyzed by experts. Blood doesn't randomly splatter all over a cabin from random blows, it suggested a prolonged beating. Such behavior was atypical for either robbery or abuse, as typically, brutal criminals are well acquainted with their victims. Naturally, the immediate environment of Shirley was inspected, and everyone who knew Shirley pointed to her ex-husband, Doug. There were no other suspects, only he had issues with her. This man constantly beat her and threatened her. Investigators decided to interview Doug. He confirmed that he had a tense relationship with his wife but blamed her difficult character. He denied any accusations of domestic violence and cruelty on his part, accusing his wife of wanting to spite him after the divorce. Given the capabilities of forensic science in 1994, it was not possible to quickly determine the source of the blood found in the car. Doug behaved calmly, and there was no evidence linking him to the crime. Despite numerous witnesses believing him guilty, this was deemed insufficient. The main problem was the absence of a body. It remained unclear what happened to Shirley, so she was still considered missing. Days, weeks, and months passed. It became obvious to everyone that she was likely not alive, but the only suspect persisted. Authorities combed a vast area with a radius of tens of kilometers around where they found the abandoned car. The squad did manage to find valuable evidence, but no direct indications of Doug's involvement. Detectives interrogated him repeatedly again, but to no avail. When they compared the blood found in the car with samples from Shirley's relatives, they confirmed that the profiles matched, which meant the victim of the beating in the car, as expected, was Shirley. Interestingly, in addition to Shirley's blood, traces belonging to someone else were found inside the car. Analysis compared to Doug's blood showed that the additional blood belonged to him. However, without a body, even this evidence did not establish a direct link to the crime or elicit a confession from him. He insisted that the car was his, as Shirley had used it during their 15-year relationship, and he could have repeatedly injured himself inside it. It was impossible to calculate the exact time of his bloodstains' appearance. All of this caused bewilderment and discontent among the relatives of Shirley. The local community was also outraged because a dangerous person was walking free. Many believed in Doug's guilt. The Duguay family insisted that he was the only one capable of such cruelty. In the car, there were numerous splatters of blood, and experts indicated they resulted from medium force blows. However, the police were not sure if the criminal had used a weapon. The cushion on Shirley's seat was soaked in blood. She had used it to sit while driving. Being a petite woman, about 150 centimeters tall and weighing around 45 kilograms, she needed the cushion to control the vehicle effectively. The cushion had blood from two different sources mixed. About 1 kilometer from the abandoned car, they discovered a shovel with traces of blood and 2 black hairs. This evidence became the first valuable clue examined by forensic scientists in the laboratory. Microscopic analysis and comparison with the hairs found on Shirley confirmed they belonged to her. By this time, the search operation had been underway for more than a month. The most significant find was a thick plastic bag containing a pair of sports shoes and a leather jacket, both covered in blood. The items were located 2.5 kilometers from Shirley's car. The blood stain analysis confirmed they belonged to Shirley. However, the shoes and jacket were clearly not her size, were more consistent with a man's. When questioned about the sneakers and jacket, Douglas denied ever having worn anything like that. Unfortunately, there was once again no confirmation of this, as his blood was not found on the jacket or shoes. Detectives noticed that the sizes matched, but this was not enough to bring charges. The list of evidence included significant circumstantial evidence. It turned out to be a tough nut to crack, so more information was needed. The found shoes were sent to shoe expert Key Beadle. He knew well that each person wears shoes in their own way. Differences in shape, size, and structure of feet result in unique features in mechanics. Each person's gait is as unique as their fingerprints. If the shoes had been worn for a long time, This would affect the geometry and wear characteristics. Dr. Key began studying the marks left on the insole and the inner surface of the sole. As part of the investigation, a warrant was obtained to create casts of Douglas's feet. This became an important stage in the process. In parallel, the expert analyzed the condition of the insoles and soles of the discovered shoes, revealing that the criminal had a deformed big toe. A small, twisted print suggested that Doug had used them. Nevertheless, Doug continued to deny his involvement. Forensic experts placed great hopes on analyzing the jacket, which had peculiar fibers, including 20 thin white hairs. With this exception, no other evidence remained on the clothing. The forensic experts examined the fibers under a microscope and found that they resembled animal hair rather than human hair. The detectives were busy with the investigation, and one of them recalled an important detail. When he first came to speak with Doug at his home, he saw a white cat named Snowball. By connecting the owner of the jacket to the animal, they could potentially establish who owned the item of clothing. The police became convinced that these lint particles were left by the criminal's cat, which led to the key question of how to prove the criminal's guilt through his pet. The search began for an expert who dealt with such matters. Detectives made hundreds of phone calls and were amazed to find that such studies had not yet been explored in the history of criminology and forensic science. The closest researchers were pet experts studying their genes to combat diseases. Dr. Stephen O'Brien, a geneticist from the National Institute in the USA, spent decades studying hereditary diseases in cats, including cancer. He knew more about pet genetics than anyone else in the world. However, even he did not promise much. Comparing the DNA profile of Snowball with detected fibers was a unique task. First, it was necessary to obtain a blood sample from the cat, but the owner of the pet was not inclined to cooperate with the police. A significant amount of time was spent just catching the cat on the street and getting a blood sample. Finally, Dr. O'Brien received samples of Snowball's materials, including fur, which were transported almost under escort. Fortunately, many of these hair follicles were preserved, providing enough for a DNA profile comparison. Dr. O'Brien confirmed that the fibers belonged to the same animal. However, a new question arose. Prince Edward Island was nearly isolated, and the doctor had serious suspicions that many domestic cats lived there, which could mean they were all related. If this was indeed the case, then comparing DNA profiles could show a match with any two animals in the province, calling into question all the work done. The police were not planning to give up, so they decided to gather at least 24 blood samples from cats in the area, which would later be delivered to Dr. O'Brien's laboratory for analysis and comparison. This process took even more time, during which the dangerous criminal was still at large. When the report was finally ready, Dr. O'Brien confirmed that there was great genetic diversity among the cats on Prince Edward Island. Not a single pair of the 20 samples collected matched. This led to the conclusion that, apart from Snowball, only one of the 70 million cats could have owned this fur, which became a turning point that confirmed the white fur of the jacket belonged to Douglas's cat. Despite this evidence, Douglas continued to insist that he had nothing to do with the jacket and claimed he had no idea where his ex-wife was. More than 6 months passed, but the body of Shirley was still not found. 7 months after the disappearance of Shirley, a random fisherman was sailing along the river in Enmore. He noticed something suspicious in the bushes along the shore but could not see it clearly. So, he decided to swim closer. From a distance of several meters, he realized that the remains definitely belonged to a person, but the stature was so small that the fisherman initially thought it was a child. They was far from the city, so he thought that wild animals might have dragged someone's body away. He covered the remains with his raincoat and went towards the city to contact the police. When the authorities finally arrived, they saw the remains of a woman in a state of severe decomposition. The situation was not as dire as it could have been because the remains had not been exposed to extreme heat, which partially alleviated the decomposition situation. The examination confirmed that the body belonged to Shirley and Duguay. Although it was buried, the body surfaced due to abnormal weather conditions that made the coastal soil unstable, causing it to wash away. Despite the degree of decomposition, it was obvious that Shirley had been subjected to cruelty. The exact cause of death could not be established. There were several theories. One suggested that she had been strangled, while another proposed that she was beaten with a shovel, as the shovel was found earlier. However, it could not be ruled out that the blood stain on the shovel was made after Shirley's death. The killer might have accidentally caused damage when digging up the makeshift grave. Shirley's jaw had been beaten and was broken in 3 places, with one of her missing teeth found in her lungs. The situation had changed dramatically, and it remained to be understood what the motive was, making it possible to hold Douglas accountable. After the body was discovered, investigators decided to take a fresh look at the old evidence and re-examine the area around Shirley's house and car. This yielded important results. First of all, they discovered a letter that had been overlooked earlier, contained threats. Thanks to this letter, the motive for the murder was revealed. It turned out that immediately after Shirley filed for sole custody rights, Douglas wrote her a frightening note in which he said he would be happier to see her in the grave than to lose the children forever. This could have been a cruel joke if not for the alarming fact that this letter was written in her ex-husband's blood. Unfortunately, Shirley did not have time to disclose this, publicize it, or show it to the police, as the criminal carried out his sentence earlier. Additionally, in the house of Shirley, they found photographs showing Shirley and Douglas together. He in the image wore the very jacket from which the hairs of his cat were later found. Finally, a little more than a month after the murder, Douglas was arrested and placed under custody until the hearing began. On July 19, 1996, Douglas Beamish ended up in court, largely thanks to his cat, Snowball, who was instrumental in the pursuit of justice. Douglas was convicted of premeditated murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. This case became the first in crime history where DNA and animal materials were used as evidence of a criminal's guilt. According to Dr. O'Brien, the day he began examining and comparing those white hairs marked the birth of veterinary forensic examination. In the following years, this practice was utilized many times and led to the imprisonment of several dangerous criminals. The center at the University of California, Davis, has used its methods in more than 500 cases over the past 15 years, confirming that the tools used to profile human DNA also work reliably on animals. Shirley's daughter, Shelley, grew up to become an advocate for abused women. She spoke about how, as a child, she watched her mother being beaten by her father. After his conviction, Douglas ended up in the Ontario Correctional Centre. In 1998 and 1999, he tried to appeal his conviction but was denied, as DNA evidence is considered irrefutable. In 2013, he first attempted to exercise his right to parole. However, he was again refused, as the commission ruled that the risk of committing another crime was too high. This was not the end of Douglas's story. After almost 25 years behind bars, discussions began about releasing the killer from prison under escort for 12 hours. Another meeting of the parole commission was held, during which relatives were present. Shirley's sister, Marie Arsenault, spoke out, stating that the murder of her sister had triggered a series of family tragedies. One sister became addicted to alcohol as a means of coping with the pain of loss. It spiraled out of control after Shirley's death. She died first due to health problems, and then her husband committed to end his own life because he could not cope with the death of his beloved wife, having tried to save her until the last moment. She insisted that if Douglas was released, he should be prohibited from living on Prince Edward Island. Shirley's father suffered a series of heart attacks after Marie spoke at the parole board meeting. Interestingly, during these hearings, Douglas took responsibility for Shirley's death for the first time. Prior to this, he had persistently denied his guilt. The commission determined that he still posed a high risk of reoffending, including crimes related to violence and cruelty. Despite finally admitting guilt and realizing the seriousness of his actions, it was believed that significant work still needed to be done before he was ready for full parole. Until that point, he had found it easier to blame others for what had happened than to face the truth. During his time in prison, Douglas suffered 3 heart attacks and kidney failure, nearly dying several times. He is currently serving his sentence in Dorchester Prison, having been transferred there a year before the hearing, during which he was granted a 12-hour escorted release. He expressed a desire to attend a rehabilitation center for ex-offenders convicted of serious crimes located in the Moncton area. Notably, the parole board noted 2 incidents demonstrating that he was not yet ready for life on the outside. In 2019, he threw a knife while preparing food in the kitchen of a minimum security correctional facility, and a year later, he went on a hunger strike, claiming dissatisfaction with the food provided by prison staff. Following the end of the meeting, a decision regarding Douglas Beamish's 12-hour temporary release was not established. He himself stated that he believed he was not ready for full release but wanted to visit a rehabilitation center in Moncton as he did not want to return to Prince Edward Island. It is worth noting that the Correctional Service of Canada had previously allowed him to be temporarily absent under escort for medical reasons and out of compassion. Both occasions took place without incident. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jeffrey Hazelwood. Natalie Henderson, Carter Davis, and Jeffrey Hazelwood are 3 residents of Roswell. Natalie and Carter are friendly, intelligent, and optimistic. Natalie is actively involved in school activities, often representing the school at social events, while Carter balances academics and sports. Jeffrey, on the other hand, struggles with his studies, with his grades and academic performance significantly lower than his peers. As a teenager, Jeffrey was sent to a military-style school, and after graduating, he remained unemployed for several years. He later found a job in government, which allowed him to support himself. Jeffrey had a challenging childhood. He was born on July 10, 1996, into difficult circumstances. His mother, Sherry, was only 19 years old when he was born, and Sherry's partner abandoned her before Jeffrey was born. During her pregnancy, Sherry struggled with drug use. Those around her realized that she was incapable of caring for a child. As a result, when Jeffrey was 6 months old, he moved in with his grandparents. Although Jeffrey's grandparents loved him, his troubled relationship with his mother leading to him being labeled a difficult child. Throughout his teenage years, there were many incidents reported in Jeffrey's family. Jeffrey frequently engaged in dangerous activities. On one occasion, he wrote a note saying he was going to spend a few days in the wilderness testing his survival skills. In another disturbing incident, he took his grandfather's gun, prompting neighbors to call the police. His actions increasingly worried his grandparents, who attempted to hide the weapons. Despite their efforts, Jeffrey, who was smart and determined, successfully broke into a safe and took the knives and swords he loved. By 2013, when Jeffrey turned 16, his grandmother felt the need to report his troubling behavior to the police, likely out of concern for her safety and that of others. Just weeks earlier, he had warned her that his patience would eventually wear thin, and he might hurt someone, although he didn't specify who or when. As a result, Jeffrey was sent to a military school. After returning, he entered a relationship that he cherished deeply. His social media accounts were filled with expressions of love for his girlfriend, mixed with images of wolves, dark quotes, and posts about anger and mortality. No one seemed to notice or help Jeffrey. Eventually, the city of Roswell had a serious problem. On August 1, 2016, a Monday morning, a driver was making a delivery at the local grocery store. At 6 a.m., just as he approached the store, his peaceful morning turned into a nightmare. As he turned the corner toward the delivery area, he was shocked to see 2 bodies lying side by side in a parking lot, both dead and covered in blood. Panicked, he called the police to report what he had seen. Police quickly arrived at the scene and discovered the bodies of 2 young people. A man and a woman, both dead. Police spotted 2 cars parked nearby, and when they ran the license plates, they discovered they belonged to Carter Davis and Natalie Henderson. The young couple came from middle-class families, and neither had a criminal record or any violations. The investigation began with a search of the vehicle and a review of surveillance camera footage from the supermarket. The video showed Carter and Natalie driving through the parking lot at approximately 3 a.m. before disappearing behind the building. Additionally, just minutes before they arrived, a silver Honda had parked in front of the store. After Carter and Natalie passed the Honda, a tall man with long, unkempt hair got out of the Honda and followed them on foot, but then disappeared from view of the surveillance camera. His facial features were unclear, and the video did not capture his license plate number. All police could determine was that the car was silver, a 1990 or 1998 model, and had mismatched wheels. Police contacted the Bureau of Investigation for assistance in finding a suspect. The task was difficult because they needed to compile a list of all Honda owners in the city. After sifting through the data, they narrowed the list down to about 650 vehicles and their owners. This process of elimination was long and difficult, requiring patience and effort on the part of the police. However, their persistence paid off. On August 3, 2016, just 2 days after the discovery of Carter and Natalie's bodies, police located a driver's license that belonged to a Honda owner. This owner, Jeffrey Hazelwood, 20, lived in Roswell and was known to police because of his long black hair. His grandparents were shocked when some police officers knocked on their front door. Their surprise quickly turned to concern when the officers asked about their grandson Jeffrey. They informed the police that they did not know where he was. Jeffrey's grandparents said that they had kicked him out of the house 2 days ago. The police then investigated and found that Jeffrey was staying at his girlfriend's house. They knew the address and set up a perimeter around the house. After finding the boy's car parked in the driveway, the police waited nearby, patiently waiting for Jeffrey to show up. Hours later, Jeffrey finally came out of the house, got into his car and drove away. Undercover police observed Jeffrey as he arrived at a gas station, walked around, and changed his clothes. At that point, officers surrounded him and arrested him on suspicion of the murders of Natalie Henderson and Carter Davis before he could react. Initially, Jeffrey denied killing anyone, but after being held for several days, he was questioned by Officer Jennifer Bennett, who was assigned to Jeffrey's case. During this interrogation, several strange details came to light. When arrested, Jeffrey insisted that he was an innocent bystander and that he had not killed anyone. However, during questioning, he claimed that another man had pressured him into committing the crime. As the interrogation continued, he stopped mentioning his accomplice. Additionally, Jeffrey claimed that a voice in his head had told him to kill Natalie and Carter. Despite Jeffrey's numerous lies and confusing statements, Police Officer Bennett was able to piece together what happened on the night of August 1st. Jeffrey said his troubles began when his grandparents kicked him out of the house. To clear his head, he went to a local Waffle House, but since he had nowhere to stay for the night, he decided to park at the local grocery store. He arrived around 3 a.m. and sat in his car. While he was sitting there, 2 cars pulled into the parking lot, drove past him, circled the building. Feeling bored and lonely, Jeffrey decided to follow them on foot. After the 2 cars parked side by side, Carter Davis got out of the car and got into the back seat of Natalie's car. Natalie then joined him in the back seat, saying they wanted some private time together. Unbeknownst to them, Jeffrey was hiding behind a nearby electrical panel, observing their interaction. However, Jeffrey climbed up a nearby service ladder to get a better view from the roof of the car. Jeffrey later claimed that he did not watch for long. Sadly, Jeffrey obtained his grandfather's gun after breaking into a safe just before being kicked out of his house. What he did next was horrific. He climbed down from the roof, approached Natalie's car, and demanded that Carter exit the vehicle. He struck Carter with the gun. In that moment of panic, Jeffrey realized Carter was taller and stronger, putting him at a disadvantage in a physical struggle. In a shocking act, he raised the gun and shot Carter in the head at close range, then ordered Natalie to get out of the car. Without detailing what he did to her, Jeffrey later shot Natalie in the back of the head after she turned away. After both victims were dead, he ransacked Natalie's car, took her wallet, and drove away. However, Jeffrey's criminal activities did not stop there. That night, he was found at a gas station using Natalie's credit card to fill up his car. Surveillance cameras even recorded Jeffrey wearing a mask to hide his identity. During questioning, he stated that despite having the mask and gun, he did not take any further action. Jeffrey stated that he needed the mask to hide his identity from the person who ordered him to kill Natalie and Carter. After stopping at the gas station, he returned to the bodies. He placed the bodies on the asphalt as they had been found that morning. He then called his girlfriend and asked if he could stay with her until he could sort out his family issues. She had no idea that he had just killed someone, and she welcomed him into her home. Eventually, the police tracked him down and arrested him. During the trial, his behavior was highly erratic. He talked to himself, claimed to hear voices, and even spoke with a British accent, at one point sat shaking, made erratic head movements, and talked to himself. He was also observed conversing with an imaginary dog and pretending to hit it on the head. At a later hearing, Officer Bennett shared Jeffrey's confession, revealing the disturbing details he described about that night. He said he pulled Natalie out of the car, forced her onto the hood, and then shot her in the head. The defense argued that Jeffrey exhibited symptoms of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, Asperger's syndrome, and dissociative identity disorder. While each of these conditions can be controlled individually, the combination of all four conditions makes him an extremely unstable person. However, none of these conditions had been formally diagnosed. As such, he was deemed competent to stand trial and, with appropriate treatment, could become stable enough to understand the proceedings. Given the overwhelming amount of evidence, including forensic material from surveillance camera footage and seized items, the proof against him was strong. The prosecution quickly built a strong case against Jeffrey. The initial trial was scheduled for September 9, 2016, but it was postponed multiple times because he needed treatment. He was moved to a secure psychiatric hospital to continue his care until a new trial date was established. A hearing was conducted to evaluate Jeffrey's competence, particularly his ability to understand the legal proceedings. While he occasionally rocked in his chair, psychologists could not pinpoint his specific mental disorders. However, they diagnosed him with psychosis, which is a disorder that causes a disconnection from reality rather than a mental illness itself. Finally, on May 17, 2017, Jeffrey appeared in court as he was nearing recovery. He was not allowed to speak during treatment, so his attorney spoke on his behalf. The judge offered him a plea deal regarding the murders of Carter and Natalie, which Jeffrey accepted. He was then sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring that Jeffrey would spend the rest of his life in prison or a mental hospital. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Kriegel. Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel lived in Ireland. In 2006, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. The couple had a strong relationship and dreamed of having a child. They understood that adopting a child from an orphanage required significant time and effort, as well as meeting strict requirements, but they remained hopeful. Both had successful careers and were financially stable while waiting for their adoption documents to be processed. Eventually, they received news that a 2-year-old girl from Russia was available for adoption. Her name was Anastasia, born on February 18, 2004, in Novokuznetsk. After her birth, she was placed in an orphanage because her biological mother could not provide her with a good life. On August 10, 2006, the family brought the little girl home, marking the day as their family holiday. They decided to keep her name and called her Anna for short. The happy moment when they heard Anna's laughter filled the house. Anna was loved by her parents. They made efforts to make their family happier. They went ice skating and planned summer tourism trips. The family often went on vacation to Patrick's hometown of Annecy, France, where they owned the house. Anna made several friends there, and she looked forward to this trip every year, as she loved France and was even learning French. However, Anna struggled with learning English, and Patrick supported her in this so she could communicate better with her peers. Anna also found it difficult to form close relationships and express her emotions. Her time in the orphanage, where Anna lacked care, made her uncomfortable with being touched. Nevertheless, Geraldine and Patrick helped fill this emotional gap by loving and supporting Anna unconditionally. Their nurturing environment, along with educational activities, healthy meals, and sports, provided a strong foundation for Anna's future. During a routine checkup, doctors discovered a tumor in Anna's right ear, which resulted in significant hearing loss in her right ear and partial blindness in her right eye. Despite these challenges, Anna remained an active and cheerful girl. However, her hearing and vision problems affected her ability to learn, causing her to struggle to retain information and resulting in poor grades in elementary school. To keep up with her classmates, Anna sought professional help until the end of 3rd grade. One day, while walking home and enjoying her favorite music through her headphones, Anna suddenly encountered 4 boys blocking her way. They mocked her and even pinched her, causing her to run home in tears and tell her mother everything. Worried, Geraldine and Patrick decided to take action and file a complaint against the boys. To keep Anna safe, her parents decide to take her to school and pick her up every day, but this makes her an easier target for teasing, much to the distress of Geraldine, who feels heartbroken over her daughter's misfortune. As time passed, Anna began to harm herself to cope with her emotional struggles. Her parents became increasingly alarmed, worried that she might take more drastic actions. Geraldine's only wish was for her daughter to find happiness. After a while, Anna started to improve. She made new friends, people she enjoyed sleeping over, going for walks, watching movies, and chatting with. As Anna's high school years were coming to an end, Geraldine wanted to help her prepare for her upcoming test on May 13, 2018. They usually spent the weekends doing homework together, and even though Geraldine was very busy, he always made time to study with Anna. However, this weekend, they decided to take a break. They turned on the TV, made popcorn, and cuddled up while watching a movie. Anna's cousins joined them, and Geraldine ordered pizza. The kids played games while the adults relaxed with wine and snacks. The house was filled with laughter and fun, and no one could have predicted what would happen next. On May 14, 2018, the day started like any other. Geraldine took the train to Dublin, while Anna went to school. After lunch, Anna had an appointment with a psychologist. Meanwhile, Patrick, who was already retired, decided to sleep in. Classes ended at 4 p.m., and Anna tried to call her mother, but Geraldine was in an important meeting and couldn't answer. She sent Anna a message saying she would call back later. When Anna gets home, she finds her father Patrick relaxing in the garden. Patrick is surprised to see Anna, coming home with a boy he has never seen before. Anna is clearly excited. She whispers something to the boy, grabs her favorite sweater, and tells her father she will be home soon. Patrick reminds her that she needs to study, which she has forgotten. Patrick watches as they leave for the park, and that is the last time he sees his daughter. At first, her father wasn't concerned because the park was only a 20-minute walk away. At 5:10 p.m., Geraldine returned home and attempted to call Anna, but she didn't pick up. After some time, she gave up on calling, assuming Anna would return soon. When Anna still hadn't come home, Patrick told his wife that Anna had gone to the park with a guy. This was unusual. Geraldine quickly sent Anna a text asking her to come home but got no reply. This silence worried her parents. Geraldine felt anxious due to past experiences where her daughter faced ridicule for her illnesses. Worried, Geraldine went to the park but couldn't find Anna. The parents began driving around the neighborhood searching for her. Their anxiety grew when they realized they knew nothing about the guy Anna had been with. By 9 p.m., they reported Anna missing to the police, stressing that she hadn't answered any calls or messages, which was very unlike her. They also informed the police about the unknown guy. The police quickly located a young man named Boy B, who appeared surprised by their inquiry. When they asked him where Anna was, he explained that they had walked together until 5:40 p.m. and then parted ways. Following this, the police initiated a search for Anna, scouring the area and examining surveillance footage. Patrick and Geraldine, Anna's parents, provided photos, including one of her wearing the black sweatshirt she had on when she left that evening. While the police analyzed video footage that showed Boy B and Anna in the park around 5 p.m., they noticed that at 5:14 p.m., the two left the park through a different exit, and after that, Anna seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The investigation was accelerated when a witness reported seeing the couple in the park. The video showed Boy B walking alone in the park at 5:49 p.m. When pressed by police, Boy B revealed that he had been with a friend named Boy A, who had feelings for Anna, and that he had facilitated their meeting. With this new lead, police stepped up their search efforts, sharing information about Anna's disappearance on social media and in local newspapers. At the same time, the search for Boy A started. His backpack was discovered, and security cameras captured him going in and out of the park, but there was a long period where he wasn't seen. Some people thought Anna might have run away, but that idea was quickly rejected. To solve the mystery of her disappearance, police carefully examined what happened in the park that day, looking closely at the actions of Boy B and Boy A with their parents present. The boys' interactions raised suspicions among the police, resulting in them being questioned separately. Boy B's testimony remained consistent, but Boy A's story differed. He was surprised when Boy B asked him to go with him, knowing that Anna had feelings for him. During their conversation, Boy A described a frightening incident in which two unknown men attacked them, leading to a struggle in which he injured one of the attackers. He showed police his injuries, including scratches and cuts to his face, suggesting that the unknown men might be involved in Anna's disappearance. As a result, the police asked for descriptions of the attackers and collected the boys' belongings for DNA testing. As the investigation continued, specialized search teams, including divers and rescue teams, were sent to examine local waters. A total of 60 people, including volunteers and Anna's family, assisted in the search for her. Her disappearance attracted significant media attention. Near the park, there was an old, abandoned farmhouse called Glenwood. An eyewitness saw some young people going inside, which led the police to investigate. The farmhouse was 2 stories high and covered 42 hectares of land, but it was in a state of disrepair, with many collapsed roofs and walls. It was puzzling why the police hadn't examined the place sooner. They began their search in the park and then moved towards the farmhouse, thoroughly checking both the house and the surrounding fields. Inside, the house was dark and empty. One of the officers was struck by a strong, foul odor that filled the room. The officers then discovered the body of a woman, surrounded by clothes and a broken phone. There were also traces of blood nearby, along with a brick and a large tree branch. Based on the clothing, it was determined that it was Anna's body. She had multiple wounds, and her neck was wrapped in duct tape. Her body, lay among broken bottles and debris. The incident profoundly affected Geraldine and Patrick, as the loss of their beloved daughter was an unimaginable sorrow. The whole city was informed of the events, leaving many residents in shock. The farmhouse, which was once a safe place for children to play, had turned into the site of a terrible crime. On May 18, 2018, hundreds attended Anna Kriegel's funeral, wearing red and white armbands in her memory. The Eiffel Tower represented her love for her hometown, while her father honored her birthplace by wearing the Russian flag and carrying a doll. An autopsy revealed that Anna had suffered about a dozen injuries to her body, with numerous bruises and cuts concentrated on her head, face, and neck. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. An asphyxiation suggested she had been raped. Evidence of semen was found at the scene. Her death occurred between 5:25 and 5:54 p.m., shortly after she left the park. At the entrance to the building, she was beaten with a heavy stick and then hit with a brick, leaving blood splattered on the wall. On May 24, police gathered all the evidence and arrested two teenagers, Boy B and Boy A, who were last seen with Anna. The townspeople were shocked, as both were suspected of killing her. In Boy A's backpack, they found a zombie mask with traces of Anna's blood, along with gloves and knee pads. Semen found at the crime scene matched Boy A's DNA, and Anna's blood was also found on his shoes and clothes. Despite the evidence against Boy A, no DNA was linked to Boy B. During questioning, Boy B admitted that he saw Anna enter an abandoned house with Boy A but claimed that he did not know what Boy A was up to. Boy B wanted to enter the house but was frightened when he heard screaming coming from the entrance. He then sees Boy A tearing Anna's clothes, realizing the danger, but Boy B does not speak up, even though Anna's fate depends on his actions. Both boys were released on bail while awaiting their trial, which caused frustration among local residents. People became increasingly concerned for their safety, especially since the identities of the boys had not been made public. Both boys came from well-respected and successful families, and they had no previous criminal records or mental health issues, which surprised the community. Their case hearing took place on April 30, 2019. It was a closed hearing, with only the parents of the two teenagers in attendance. The prosecutor explained that Boy B deceived Anna into leaving her home by claiming she would meet Boy A, someone she was interested in. Instead, Boy B took her to an abandoned house where she was raped. The jury trial took place on June 12, 2019, and 5 days later, Boy A received a life sentence, with the option for a review after 12 years. Boy B was also convicted for Anna's death, despite insufficient physical evidence, and was sentenced to 15 years, eligible for review after 8 years. By law, their identities must remain confidential, and if released, they will be provided with new identities. However, Anna's parents endured the heaviest loss. Geraldine expressed that life without Anna lost its meaning. Patrick passed away on June 19, 2022, burdened with the guilt of allowing his daughter to go off with a stranger that day. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Marbella Valdez. One was born in Tijuana, Mexico's second-largest city, located in the state of Baja California. In 2020, when this case was being developed, one was 40 years old and owned a cleaning company. Although this was his main job, he seemed to have a true passion for the security sector. On one occasion, he interned at the forensic office of the state prosecutor's office. He is still passionate about being a law enforcement officer. Occasionally, he would even go out on the streets dressed in a police uniform. In August 2019, Juan met a 20-year-old girl named Marbella Valdez. She has a sweet and cheerful personality. She is often called Bella by her family and friends. As a child, she experienced many hardships. At the age of 5, she was sent to an orphanage. She continued to spend the following years in such facilities. According to local pastor David Lopez, who was present when the girl was admitted to the orphanage, she quickly demonstrated her kind nature and goodwill. This helped her win love and respect from the other children, as well as from the staff there. Although facing many difficulties, Marbella still feels optimistic and loves life. At the orphanage, she made friends like Brenda Valdez and Jairo Solana. Brenda became very close to her. Pastor David observed that they were often playing together and always by each other's side during various activities. They always love, help, and protect each other. Brenda took on the role of an older sister who was always there for her. Over time, Marbella started dreaming of a better future and successfully completed both primary and secondary school. She was considered a good student and actively participated in youth religious groups. She realized that progress comes from studying and working hard, so she started selling sweets to her schoolmates at the age of 16 and did extra work as a house cleaner. Fortunately, on her journey to success, Marbella had support. William Messick, an American IT executive, had been helping her and Brenda for some time. In 2014, he started a program to aid orphans from Tijuana, Mexico. His idea is to help children during the most difficult and vulnerable stages of their lives, until they are mature enough to face life on their own. Having been an orphan himself, William understood their struggles. His project included a scholarship program. After meeting Brenda, they formed a close bond, like father and daughter. Brenda told him about her friend, Marbella, from the orphanage, and soon he included Marbella in his program. In 2018, Marbella graduated from high school. She then enrolled at the Autonomous University of Baja California to pursue her dream of becoming a lawyer, with a focus on protecting children's rights. As she entered adulthood, William helped both Marbella and Brenda rent an apartment. Later, when she expressed her desire to live independently, and William once again supported her, acknowledging her maturity and sense of responsibility. During this time, she started university and also looked for a job to support herself. With William's help, she even purchased a car to commute easily between work, university, and home. Marbella started working at a gas station owned by Randy Chicas, a Mexican company that supports women. Her shift began at 5:30 a.m. and ended at noon. After lunch, she would head to the university to study law. Despite her packed schedule, but she made time for church services. It was at the gas station that she met Juan, who owned a cleaning company. One day, he stopped by to fill up the company car. He was immediately attracted by the friendliness and charm of Marbella. From then on, he made it a point to visit the station almost daily, filling up his cars and trying to strike up a conversation with Marbella. She treated him with the same courtesy and smile she gave to all her other customers. Soon, Juan started giving Marbella gifts, such as sweets, toys, and chocolate. He even brought breakfast for her and other female employees. She told William, who she thought of as her father, about Juan's actions. William warned Marbella to be careful since Juan was much older. However, she said she wasn't interested in Juan. For she, a 20-year-old girl, the attention of an older person like Juan seemed funny and even ridiculous. Her colleagues also found the situation funny. Everyone considered Juan to be a friendly and respectable person, not a threat to young girls. Marbella made it clear she wasn't interested in Juan and often turned down his invitations to meet. Juan didn't take these rejections well, and his behavior started to change. Marbella noticed that Juan would often follow her after her shift at the gas station. He seemed to always know her whereabouts and would appear, asking her to go with him. There were times when she suspected he of following her home. She mentioned this strange behavior to her colleagues. On Wednesday, February 5, 2020, Marbella failed to show up for work at the gas station and did not contact anyone to explain her absence. Marbella and her friend Brenda, although not living together, would meet up several times a week. Brenda had a young son whom Marbella adored and visited often. They would talk on the phone daily. Brenda, who worked the night shift, would usually call Marbella every morning after returning home. That Wednesday, Brenda and Marbella didn't talk as usual. Brenda woke up around 9 a.m. to find a message from Marbella saying she had a stomach ache and wouldn't be going to work. Instead, she planned to see a doctor. This message worried Brenda for two reasons: her health and the unusual manner in which the message was written. It was also strange that she didn't call. Brenda tried to reach Marbella but couldn't, so she contacted their mutual friends. However, none of them had any information about Marbella's whereabouts. The group of friends began searching for Marbella in local hospitals and medical centers, but they couldn't find her anywhere. Brenda and one of her friends decided to visit Marbella's house. They knocked on the door and rang the bell, but there was no answer. Normally, Marbella would leave a window slightly open for her friends to come and go. This time, the window was wide open. Brenda climbed in through the window and found the interior of the house looking as if Marbella had just come home from university. Her belongings, including books, clothes, bag, and car keys, were all in their usual places. However, Marbella is missing. Throughout the day, they searched various locations but found nothing. According to Brenda, they went to the police to report Marbella missing. However, because Marbella was an adult, police regulations required waiting 3 days before launching an official search. Despite this, an investigation began right away. Brenda and her friends started making flyers with Marbella's photo. Marbella was described as a young girl with brown eyes, long straight chestnut red hair, dark skin, a slim build, a height of 1.50 meters, and a weight of 45 kilograms. They posted and distributed these flyers throughout the city. At the same time, William used his network of contacts to launch a search campaign for Marbella. Along with Brenda, they even attempted to hack into Marbella's phone to determine her location, but this was unsuccessful. In a later interview, Brenda mentioned that even Juan's behavior became more suspicious. 3 days after Marbella's disappearance, on February 8, the police received a call from a man who reported finding a woman's body in a dump in the Colonia Te Colet area. This location was over 26 miles from Marbella's house in southern Tijuana and was so remote. It took the police a long time to locate this site, but they eventually arrived. Among a pile of garbage, they discovered a large black bag containing the body of a young woman. She was dressed in blue pajamas with images of black puppies and animal print slippers. The body was almost face down, with the legs tied with a yellow cord and the hands tied behind the back with a pink scarf wrapped. The body was taken to the morgue for examination, while investigators collected evidence at the scene. After finding the body, police informed Brenda that the body's characteristics matched the description of Marbella. Brenda and William immediately went to the morgue, but were told they had to wait until the next day to examine the body. Juan unexpectedly appeared and helped them gain access to the morgue. Unfortunately, they determined that the body was that of Marbella. At that time, Juan did not know that Brenda and Marbella's friends had reported him to the police, as they suspected him of stalking Marbella. The police requested permission from Marbella's family to carry out a forensic examination and conduct other investigations to collect evidence. The examination of Marbella's remains took about 5 days. Mourning began on February 13, 2020, and continued until February 14. Juan attended the wake and funeral, he wearing a T-shirt with her image, This made her friends extremely angry. Despite their anger, they remained silent, follow the instructions of the authorities so that he does not become suspicious, as they feared he might escape before sufficient evidence was collected for his arrest. At Marbella's funeral, Jose Ruiz, a close friend of hers, spotted an individual with scratches on his neck. This man behaved strangely, repeatedly approaching the coffin, threatening people with a knife, and offered to carry flowers to the cemetery in his car. Meanwhile, police are still trying their best to investigate Marbella's death. Forensic results revealed that she died from asphyxia due to severe compression of her neck, which blocked her air supply. She also suffered serious blows to the abdomen, causing damage to her internal organs. In front of the University of Baja California, Marbella's classmates held a memorial in her memory. They emphasized that she was a victim of violence by men, a serious problem taking place across Mexico. The investigation into Marbella's killing included interviews with people who knew her. Through the interviews, it was learned that a few days before she was killed, she had spoken to Juan. He said that he was a federal police officer in Baja California and worked as a specialist at the Attorney General's office. However, it was discovered that he had only interned at the Attorney General's office. Additionally, some media outlets reported that he had a criminal record and was imprisoned for offenses related to illegal substances in the state of Sonora. The results of a search of Marbella's car were even more troubling, as experts found a hidden geolocation device. Later, a search of Juan's house uncovered several similar devices and satellite detection receivers. This explains why he always knows where she is. However, the most compelling evidence came from a forensic examination of the body, which revealed fingerprints and semen. DNA analysis confirmed that these matched the genetic sample taken from Juan when he was brought in for questioning. An analysis of Marbella's mobile phone showed that her phone and Juan's were always in the same locations during her disappearance. This shows that he used her phone to send messages to her friends. A few days after the funeral, Juan was charged with the murder of Marbella, and on February 22, 2020, he appeared in court for the first time. During this hearing, it was revealed that after her disappearance, he contacted the state attorney general's office several times to ask about the investigation's progress. He also expressed his wish that the person responsible for Marbella's death would not be punished. The authorities stated that Juan had always been the main suspect in the case, due to previous reported incidents of harassment. It was said that he was obsessed with Marbella, even though he had known her for only 5 months. Since then, he had been under police surveillance. According to the investigation, he allegedly entered her house and kidnapped her. The incident occurred between February 5 and 8 in the Sai Kotlef Aliman neighborhood, where Juan lived. There he kept she, exerting physical and sexual violence, which caused injuries to her face, stomach, and genitals, ultimately leading to her death. The conclusion in the case was that Marbella died of lack of oxygen, caused by compression of the neck, which blocked the airway and blood vessels. She also sustained severe bruising to her abdomen, causing damage to internal organs. Juan's DNA matched semen found in Marbella's body, and a considerable amount of tissue was found under her fingernails, indicating a struggle. During the hearing, mobile phone tracking data revealed that Juan and Marbella's phones were together starting from the morning of February 5. The body was discovered at Marbella's home. Another important clue is that their phones were also together on February 2. This was also the day Marbella reported her house and car keys missing. On February 27, at a hearing in the Superior Court of Tijuana, Judge Daniel Aguilar Patina concluded there is enough evidence to accuse Juan of killing Marbella. The judge highlighted that Juan deliberately misled everyone about Marbella's whereabouts, pretending to be worried in front of her family and at the gas station, while he actually knew what was going on. He was temporarily detained in MIAs, but maintained his innocence regarding His trial occurred from September 14 to 29, 2022. Over 2 years after the incident, forensic evidence and testimony from people close to Marbella were presented. It was discovered that on the morning Marbella went missing, a colleague had called her, noting that she had not been to the gas station. She only managed to say she was unwell before the connection was broken. Her friends described her as a wonderful person and identified Juan as a harasser. She never believed she was in danger, so she didn't file an official complaint against Juan. She thinking he would lose interest after her repeated rejections. Other witnesses mentioned that he often pretended to be a law enforcement officer, but he was just an intern at the University of Justice. After reviewing all the evidence and listening to the testimonies, Judge Marta Elvia Luna Vargas declared that Juan committed the horrendous crime, he that took Marbella's life. She then sentenced Juan to 42 years and 6 months in prison for the murder of Marbella Valdez. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Mariana Jocelyn Baltira. Mariana Jocelyn Baltira was born on October 24, 2000, in Morelos, a city in the state of Mexico. She was the eldest of 2 children. Her mother, Syra, had a difficult time giving birth to she, as she was born much earlier than expected. At birth, she has very low weight, causing doctors to be concerned about her chances of survival, and they expressed this to her parents. Mariana spent her first 2 months in a hospital's special ward for premature infants. Her mother prayed constantly for her recovery, and prayers were answered. Her condition improved rapidly, she gained weight, and by New Year's 2001, she was discharged home. So, the girl's parents celebrated the holiday with their daughter. While she grew up slim and beautiful, her health remained fragile from an early age. When Mariana was 4 years old, her family welcomed a second child, a baby boy named Bernardo. She adored her younger brother and helped her parents care for him from an early age. The 2 sisters were extremely close and almost inseparable. At the age of 6, Mariana was diagnosed with epilepsy, which required her to take regular medication to reduce the chances of seizures. Thanks to effective treatment and regular supervision from experts, her condition was well managed, allowing her to live a relatively normal life, much like other children her age. She pays great attention to health care, always follows a routine and takes medicine on time. Mariana draws very well and loved music. She was kind, sincere, and open-hearted. Everyone who knew her spoke highly of her. Despite this, she was very modest and shy, especially during her teenage years. She had only a few close friends, rarely went on dates, avoided parties, and hardly interacted with boys. She preferred spending time at home with her family. Petite and delicate, she looks much younger than her actual age. Although she is 16, she is often mistaken for being 13. Her care and love for animals is demonstrated by her regular care of homeless animals, feeding them, treating them, and finding them a safe home. While in high school, she dreamed of becoming a veterinarian to provide professional care to animals in need. Mariana's parents often described her as too naive and trusting. This made them worry that someone would take advantage of her innocence and harm her. The neighborhood where her family lived was generally peaceful, and most of the residents know each other. However, their street was lined with many shops employing migrant workers, often unofficially. Some of these workers even lived inside the shops because they lacked housing. Of course, among these workers there are those with criminal records. However, the shop owner sees no problem with these workers, as long as they perform their duties responsibly. About 50 meters from Mariana's house is a butcher shop where her parents often go to buy meat. The shop owner employed 4 workers, 2 locals who managed the sales and 2 outsiders who handled unloading, preparing the meat, and cleaning the shop. The outsiders lived in an attic on the shop's 2nd floor. As Mariana grew up, her parents occasionally asked her to do errands, such as buying meat at this butcher shop. There, she repeatedly encountered Juan Cruz Quintero Martinez, a handyman who lived on the 2nd floor. Just his appearance was enough to make her extremely scared. She often told her parents about this, describing his sinister gaze that made her blood run cold. However, he never approached or interacted with her, he only looked at her. Since there was no specific reason to accuse him, her parents decided it was best to not let her go to that store anymore. Instead, they began doing the shopping themselves. Then, one committed a minor theft, leading the store owner to fire him. From then on, no one heard from him for about a year. However, at the start of summer 2017, he showed up at the store again, asking his former employer for his job back. Surprisingly, he was rehired and moved back into the 2nd floor of the store. One day, Cyrus' niece was visiting their family. At that time, Mariana and her younger brother, Bernardo, were also at home because they have summer vacation. That morning, only Orlando, her father, had left the house around 9 a.m. Syra asked Mariana to go to the local supermarket to buy groceries for breakfast. Normally, she didn't let Mariana go out alone, but she thought her daughter was old enough to handle the task quickly and safely. It was bright outside, the streets were busy, and she believed nothing bad could possibly happen. Syra gave Mariana some money and asked her to buy milk, eggs, and vegetables. When little girl left the house, she wore an old t-shirt and pajama pants. The store was less than a few hundred meters away, so the trip to buy the groceries and return home in no more than 30 minutes. However, when an hour passed and little girl still hadn't returned, Syra became worried. She had left her phone at home, so Syra, holding her little niece in her arms, went out to search for her daughter. Syra walked to the store and asked the cashiers if they had seen Mariana, a young girl wearing glasses. They told Cyrus that the girl had been there, bought the groceries a couple of hours ago, and left. At that moment, Syra began to realize that something terrible had happened to her daughter. She hurried back home, asked Bernardo to watch over her niece, and went out again to continue the search. Syra began asking neighbors, street vendors, and passers-by if they had seen Mariana. However, the little girl seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Immediately after that, Syra immediately contacted the police and called her husband, Orlando. He took a break from work and rushed home to help search for Mariana. By the time the police arrived, dozens of neighbors, along with relatives and friends of the Baltira family, joined the search for Mariana. They distributed flyers with her picture. Initially, police asked the parents if their daughter might have gone on a date, met a friend, or visited someone. Her parents firmly denied these theories, insisting that she would never leave without informing them, especially since she had gone to the store in home clothes and carry a grocery bag. The area where Mariana disappeared had surveillance cameras, but almost none of them were functioning. Despite searching all day, no clues or traces of little girl were found. As night fell, the initial anxiety and panic turned into despair. The parents began to fear the worst, that their daughter would no longer live. On July 28, around 8 a.m., Mariana's parents received a call from a relative who lived nearby. The relative informed them that several police cars had arrived at the butcher's shop. Then, they quickly got ready and went to the scene. However, the police did not allow them inside, claiming that the situation had nothing to do with their daughter. Despite this, they were still resolutely not to leave. A few minutes later, after inspecting the premises, police officers approached Mariana's father, Orlando, and informed him that the body of a young girl, matching the description of Mariana, had been found on the second floor of the building. The body was lifeless and severely mutilated. Orlando was asked to come inside for identification, but the officers strongly advised against it, warning that the scene was extremely gruesome. When Orlando entered and saw the body of his beloved daughter lying in a pool of blood, he felt like the whole world had collapsed. He was at a loss as to how to break the sad news to his wife, who was waiting outside. The cause of death was determined to be massive blood loss from a deep wound to the stomach. It was later discovered that the criminal had cut out the girl's stomach while she was still alive and left her to bleed to death. Experts concluded that Mariana died in the early hours of July 28, just hours before her body was discovered. This meant she had been alive for nearly 24 hours after her disappearance. During that time, the murderer continuously tortured the girl. Then he caused the wound that caused her death. The murder weapon was identified as a butcher knife, which was found on the floor near her body. The store owner discovered the horrific incident when he came to work in the morning. According to the butcher shop owner, every last Thursday of the month, the shop closes for cleaning. On this day, the owner focused on organizational tasks, held meetings with suppliers, and submitted reports to the tax inspectorate. Meanwhile, the employees disinfected and cleaned the premises. On Thursday morning, July 27, 2017, when the owner arrived at the store, he immediately noticed bloodstains on the floor. At first, he thought one of his employees who lived on the second floor might have been injured. However, upon going upstairs, he was stunned to see his employee's belongings covered in blood, as well as a knife and the body of a young girl in a pool of blood. Additionally, a significant amount of money was missing from the cash register, which the criminal had likely taken in fleeing the scene. 2 employees who lived and worked at the store immediately became suspects. However, an hour later, one of them arrived at the store, just as shocked as everyone by what had happened. He said that the day before, he was busy, so he had to go back to his hometown, and the other employee agreed to cover his shift. The police determined his account to be truthful, as there was no evidence placing him at the crime scene. As a result, he was removed from the list of suspects. By that time, investigators had obtained CCTV footage from the supermarket where Mariana was shopping on the last day of her life. The footage showed little girl entering the store, followed a few minutes later by Juan Martinez, the butcher. His behavior was unsettling. He appeared to stalk her, like a predator tracking its prey. Without purchasing anything, he left the supermarket shortly after she. After that, both of them vanished. Although there were street cameras in the area, they were not functioning. Additionally, none of the many passers-by or street vendors reported seeing anything unusual. Mariana's parents were adamant that their daughter would never willingly leave with Juan, regardless of what he might have said or done to persuade her. They believe he must have forced the girl into the butcher shop. However, this raised a question: why hadn't little girl screamed or called for help? Once again, no witnesses noticed anything out of the ordinary. In 2015, Juan came under police scrutiny for harassment and causing serious bodily harm. He had started working as an assistant in a butcher's shop earlier that year. According to the shop owner, he was diligent and raised no concerns for a long time. However, in mid-2016, he was caught stealing money and was fired. After losing his job, he moved back to the suburbs to live with his parents. There, he lived with his old and weak mother and his sister, who was her primary caregiver. Juan took advantage of his family, stealing money and belongings from the house. He abusing alcohol and illegal drugs. He frequently physically assaulted his mother and sister. Eventually, his sister, fed up with his abusive behavior, threatened to report him to the police. Because he was afraid of being arrested by the police, he decided to leave home. He went to his old employer, the owner of a butcher shop, and asked to be rehired. The owner agreed, giving him both a job and allowed him to live on the second floor of the store. This happened in mid-June, about a month before a tragic incident unfolded. At first, Juan performed his work diligently. However, about a week later, he meets Mariana, who has changed and matured over the past year. While little girl avoided any interaction with him and never shopped at the butcher shop, he began stalking her, following her through the streets and observing her daily routes. Another butcher, the who lives with Juan on the second floor, noticed his obsession with Mariana. Little did he know that Juan would soon commit a horrific crime. After Juan was identified as the sole suspect in the rape and murder of Mariana, all available resources were mobilized to find him. The police initially focused on his home, suspecting that his relatives might help him evade capture. However, his sister insisted that he was not welcome there and explained that he knew his family would immediately turn him in to the authorities. She showed no surprise over the horrific crime he had committed. In fact, she revealed that he had previously raped their elderly mother and even attacked her with a knife, threatening to cut her open like a pig if she didn't give him money for drugs. Finding Juan was a top priority for the police because he was highly aggressive, cruel, and a serious threat to others. The money he stole from the cash register could have lasted him a long time, but no one knew what he might do next. Will he reoffend after killing Mariana? For an entire month, the police searched the Morelos area and nearby suburbs, believing he couldn't have gone far. However, over time, they still could not find him. Information about Mariana's murder quickly spread nationwide through the media, causing police forces across the country to simultaneously hunt for the cruel murderer. Juan's photograph was broadcast daily on television, printed on the front pages of newspapers, and plastered on streets nationwide with the label "Ruthless Killer at Large." A substantial bounty was offered for any information about his location or help in capturing him, and the reward amount kept increasing. Yet, despite these efforts, the case made no progress. The search for Juan was very difficult. He had no contact with his family, no friends, no social media accounts, no mobile phone, and he didn't use credit cards. After 6 months of trying to locate him without any success, the reward for information about him was raised to about $250,000. Even so, there were no leads. Juan was finally captured in August 2019, 2 years after Mariana's murder. He was found nearly 1,000 kilometers away from the crime scene. In another state, thanks to an elderly woman who recognized him on the street. She noticed his suspicious behavior, as he constantly hid his face with a hood and sunglasses, and reported him to the police. She unaware that he was one of the most wanted criminals in Mexico. Juan was arrested right on the street, and to the surprise of the authorities, he did not resist. He calmly extended his hands, allowing officers to put handcuffs on him. The next day, after confirming his identity, the authorities transported him to Morelos, where the crime took place. He was placed in custody in a local prison while awaiting trial. In May 2022, 5 years after the tragic incident, the court sentenced Juan Cruz Quintero Martinez, who committed the murder and rape, to life in prison without parole. He must also pay approximately $49,000 in compensation for the damages he caused to Mariana's family. Mariana's parents and younger brother expressed that the arrest of her killer brought them great relief, as it ensured he could no longer harm other girls. However, they also acknowledged that no punishment, not even life imprisonment or restitution, could ease the pain in their hearts. Their beloved daughter and older sister was gone, and they would have to carry this sorrow for the rest of their lives. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Laura Conley. Laura Conley was born on March 15, 1978, in the United States as the third child of Carleen and James Conley. She grew up happily with her sisters, enjoying a loving and caring family environment. However, everything changed when Carleen and James divorced. At that time, Laura was a teenager and deeply affected by her parents' separation. Struggling with her emotions, she turned to alcohol for comfort, which eventually led to an addiction to psychotropic substances. Her mother believes Laura's addiction stems from the failure of their marriage. Carleen was born on June 13, 1945, in Virginia. Her 3 daughters were her top priority. Carleen blamed herself for the impact the divorce had on her youngest daughter, Laura. Carleen was always understanding and helpful to Laura, especially during difficult times. Family members and close friends often noted Laura's irritable behavior. While Carleen's other daughters married and became independent, Laura continued to live in the family home in Kentucky. She was unemployed and required constant care. Laura believed she was mentally ill and frequently sought medical help for her medications. However, there came a point when her health care providers stopped prescribing her these medications. Desperate to get her medications, Laura began breaking into neighbors' homes to steal any pills she could find. Laura often took advantage of her mother's kindness, constantly calling her at work and causing disruptions that forced Carleen to quit her job. In 2008, Laura was convicted of petty theft, but she was quickly released because her mother posted bail. Unfortunately, the situation got worse. Laura not only verbally abused her mother, but also physically abused her. Although Laura physically harmed Carleen on several occasions, Carleen still did not report her daughter or ask her to leave the house. When an incident occurred, Laura needed a mental health evaluation, but Carleen still welcomed her daughter back home, feeling obligated to take care of Laura. It is common for parents who have experienced violence from their children to hesitate in reporting the incidents. They often fear that doing so may harm their relationship with their child. However, this reluctance can endanger their own safety. Laura's violent behavior was not only directed at her mother, it also extended to her boyfriend, Chris Lewin. Laura faced legal consequences for her actions against him on 2 separate occasions. One notable incident occurred in late October 2014. Laura woke Chris while he was asleep and accused him of cheating, leading to an argument that turned physical. During the confrontation, Laura not only bit Chris but also used a kitchen knife to lightly cut his hand. As a result of the incident, Laura was given a light sentence in order to attend anger management therapy. However, court records indicate that there is no evidence that she continued to participate in the program. At age 35, Laura continued her behavior. On January 7, 2015, she was arrested again for biting her boyfriend's finger when he intervened to stop her from attacking Carleen. He could not understand why Laura was so deeply hostile towards her mother. Carleen had always been a caring, devoted mother to her 3 daughters and proud of her 5 grandchildren. She worked hard to support Laura and give her the help she needed to overcome her difficulties. Unfortunately, despite Carleen's unconditional love and good intentions, Laura began to abuse her mother over time. 5. Laura called 911 to report an incident at her home. She informed police that a home invasion had occurred, resulting in her mother being shot to death. Officers from the Independence, Taylor Mill, and Covington police departments quickly arrived at the scene. They witnessed a horrific scene, Laura covered in blood, and her mother, 69-year-old Carleen Conley, lying on the kitchen counter with multiple stab wounds and in critical condition. When police asked Laura what had happened, she claimed she did not remember because she had been unconscious. She mentioned that about 2 hours before the incident, several people had knocked on her door asking for candy, which was common on Halloween, even though the holiday was still far away. She provided police with a description of the suspect, which led to a search of the area. However, police were unable to find anyone matching Lara's description. To continue the investigation, police took Lara to the police station for questioning. After arriving at the police station, Lara provided additional details. She mentioned that she was being pursued for money owed to drug dealers. Additionally, Lara gave police inconsistent accounts of how she found her mother's body. Initially, she said that she found Carlene dead when she returned home. However, in the same conversation, she later said that after waking up in the basement, she went upstairs and found her mother dead on the kitchen floor. However, police Mike Richman and Jim Moore quickly connected Lara to the crime within hours of starting their investigation. It became clear that she had lied to the police about what happened. The evidence showed that there had been no break-in, no fingerprints were found on the doors or windows to suggest that anyone else had been there. This led to the conclusion that Lara was the only person in the house when Carlene was murdered. Therefore, in the early morning of Sunday, March 15th, while Lara was celebrating her 37th birthday, the police arrested her for Carlene's murder. The next day, Monday, March 16th, Lara appeared before the judge via video link and stated that she pleaded not guilty. Police later booked her into the county jail without bail on charges of murder and domestic violence. She was also ordered not to contact her boyfriend. Prosecutor Rob Sanders said Carlene's murder would have a significant impact on the community, which is typically quiet and has a low crime rate. The medical examiner's report found that the attack on Carlene was severe, with an autopsy showing she had been stabbed 77 times, with 27 stab wounds and 2 bite wounds. On March 24th, Lara appeared in court and told the judge that she had no money, assets, or property, so she could not afford an attorney. The judge appointed a public defender for her and the hearing began. During the court proceedings, Officer Michael confirmed that Lara had opened the door to the police and that she was the only person in the house other than Carlene. He described finding Carlene on the kitchen floor, surrounded by several knives. He also noted that Lara was covered in blood, with her shirt, arms, legs, face, lips, and nose all covered in blood. After hearing the police testimony, the judge sent the case to the jury, who convicted Lara Conley of murder on April 16, 2015. Lara's trial began on January 3, 2017, nearly a year and 9 months after the crime. The jury heard testimony from about 30 witnesses. The prosecution presented evidence from police officers involved in the investigation and from Carlene's family. In contrast, the defense argued that Lara acted in self-defense due to severe emotional distress. The defense claimed that the knife attack was in response to an attack by her mother. When Lara took the stand, she explained to the jury that she and her mother had argued about her birthday celebration. During the argument, her mother hit her on the head with a heavy object. Lara testified that she could not remember anything that happened after that, including how she got injured or her 911 call. The jury learned that a physical examination of Lara after the crime revealed she had cuts on her head and back, bruises on her body, and a hematoma under her eye. On March 23, 2017, the parties presented their closing arguments. Assistant District Attorney Lawrence summarized the evidence and highlighted the many conflicting and unconfirmed accounts that Lara presented. Later that day, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lara Conley guilty of first-degree murder and recommended a 27-year prison sentence. Lara's legal team filed for a retrial, claiming that her sentence was unfair. The lawyers argued that Lara was dealing with mental health issues, including bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. In their appeal, the defense emphasized that Lara had consumed large amounts of alcohol and a drug intended to cause drowsiness shortly before the incident. However, the judge rejected the appeal and ordered a psychological evaluation by court-appointed experts. The defense argued for the cancellation of the preliminary trial and requested a new trial, claiming that the initial trial was flawed, leading to Lara's guilty verdict. The prosecutor was allowed to use evidence from a prior assault committed by Lara. In June 2019, the Kent Supreme Court ruled that the trial court had made a mistake, which led to the overturning of Lara's 27-year prison sentence for her mother's murder and ordered a new trial. However, instead of going through a retrial, Lara opted to accept a plea agreement, which reduced her sentence to 20 years. As a result, she will be eligible for parole in 2032. Currently, Lara is incarcerated at the Women's Correctional Facility in Kent, where she is serving her sentence. Lara killed her own mother and displayed no remorse, leaving unresolved questions about her motives. Additionally, in just 10 years, Lara could be released. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sarah Ludeman. Sarah Ludeman was born on December 7, 1990 in the United States. Her father, Charles, was a taxi driver, and her mother, Gay, was a surgeon. Although they were originally from New York, they moved to Florida in search of a better living environment. During her school years, Sarah faced ridicule from her classmates because of her weight, which had a significant impact on her psychological well-being. To cope with this, she turned to her father for support. From then on, she became very close to her father. She often sat next to him in a taxi, turned on the radio at high volume and sang along to country songs. Charles introduced her to new lessons, games, and concerts. Over time, Sarah became more confident, and during her high school years at Johns Hopkins in St. Petersburg, she made many friends. She graduated with excellent grades, and many teachers recognized her potential, predicting a bright future for her. Sarah was a bright and talented young woman who excelled in her studies and aspired to be a veterinarian. Her parents, Charles and Gay, were proud of her career choice as it reflected her deep kindness and compassion. While many of her friends were starting to date, Sarah found herself attracted only to unattainable figures, like famous musicians and athletes. By the age of 16, Sarah was content living her own life without the desire for romantic relationships. Very close to her, although they never met, was another girl her age named Rachel Wade. Rachel was born on February 27, 1990. Her family was a typical American middle-class family. Her mother worked as a teacher's assistant at an elementary school, and her father was a truck driver. Rachel was a quiet child who loved to play and have fun. Everything changed for Rachel when she entered her teenage years. At 15, she became withdrawn, moody, and frequently argued with her parents, particularly her mother. Misunderstandings arose for various reasons, such as Rachel's refusal to help with household chores or disagreements about her friends. When she was unhappy with something, she would run away. At first, her parents, Barry and Janet, searched for her on their own, but when Rachel began to disappear more frequently, they felt compelled to call in the police. They soon realized that Rachel's main problem was her desire to impress boys. She became obsessed with them, and when a boy showed interest in her, she would focus on him and ignore everything else. Rachel fell into a cycle of moving from one relationship to another. By the time she turned 17, her parents had lost all patience. They were exhausted from searching for her and trying to convince her to come home. Rachel became increasingly difficult to handle, even resorting to violence against her parents. During her last attempt to leave, she was open about her plans. She told Barry and Janet that she intended to move in with a guy named Javier Loboy. At that point, she was just a month away from her 17th birthday. Rachel's relationship with Javier ended abruptly. As expected, the police were called to their apartment several times due to arguments. When they broke up, Rachel wasn't too upset. She quickly found comfort with another friend of Javier's, Joshua Camacho. Joshua with sharp facial features, curly black hair, and golden skin that captivated her. He was physically strong and had a way with words. After high school, he didn't pursue further education and instead took on odd jobs. He enjoyed taking selfies, posing with a gun, or showing off a tattoo. Joshua often relied on the girls for support and rarely accomplished anything on his own. Erin Slow Tower, Joshua's ex-lover, became pregnant and gave birth to a child. Joshua took no responsibility for his daughter and did not pay any child support. Instead, he continued to live a carefree life in his parents' house, with no plans for the future. Joshua had a knack for attracting new girls. However, he was very controlling and even argued with his girlfriend. Joshua dropped out of school and worked as a waiter, which helped him pay for his apartment. From the beginning, he tried to assert his dominance over Rachel, controlling her every move. Later they broke up several times, but each breakup only made Rachel love him more, and she was always the first to come back. One day, Sarah Ludeman visited the restaurant where Joshua worked, and her life changed forever. She fell in love with him at first sight. Joshua made Sarah feel extremely special. Soon, Sarah mustered up the courage and told her parents about her feelings. However, Charles and Gay doubted the sincerity of Joshua, who clearly loved no one but himself and only met gullible and naive girls who could easily believe his charming words. Her parents decided to be patient, hoping that the relationship would eventually end on its own. However, this did not happen. The teenage love story continued to develop. It got to the point where Sarah transferred to another school to be closer to Joshua. Although her parents disapproved of this decision, they held on to the hope that their daughter would eventually realize the truth and that things would return to normal. During the first 6 months of their relationship, Joshua and Sarah frequently argued in public, often so violently that the police were called. One day, Sarah got into a fight with Erin, the mother of Joshua's daughter. During the argument, Joshua became angry and punched Sarah in the face, but she did not press charges. It's unclear how he managed to manipulate all 3 women, but it seems the 3 girls' different schedules made it easier for Joshua to deceive. Sarah had to be home by 11 p.m. at the request of her parents, while Erin worked 2 jobs and was only free at night. Despite her jealousy and sometimes finding Joshua with other women, Erin always returned to him. Rachel, on the other hand, had a busy job but had her own apartment, where Joshua would sometimes stay. When Sarah and Rachel discover each other, instead of facing Joshua together, they focus on competing for his affection. Their rivalry takes place primarily online through text messages and social media. Both girls are certain that they will win Joshua's heart, believing that he will eventually choose one of them. This leads to incidents such as slashed tires, broken mirrors, and street arguments. Their behavior worries their parents, who feel helpless and unsure of how to intervene. Conflict between Sarah and Rachel escalated from simple online arguments and minor issues to serious threats of violence. After Joshua and Sarah's trip to New York, Sarah posted photos of them together on MySpace, which greatly angered Rachel. On August 29, 2008, Rachel left an angry voice message for Sarah, threatening her life. In her message, Rachel not only expressed her anger, but also bragged about how financially independent and attractive she was. Sarah later saved these messages, possibly out of fear for her safety. Rachel had been texting Sarah all morning, bragging about her relationship with Joshua. Sarah's best friend Ashley had been encouraging her to get over Joshua for the past few months, reminding her that she deserved better, but Sarah never took her advice. During lunch, while the other students were in the cafeteria, Sarah cried in Ashley's arms. Ashley tried to cheer her up by suggesting that they go to the mall or the movies after school, but Sarah refused, insisting that she needed to talk to Joshua. Her situation worsened when she went to Rachel's MySpace page and saw a post in which Rachel expressed her love for Joshua. Although Rachel did not mention him by name, Sarah immediately realized who she was referring to. Frustrated, Sarah sent Joshua several text messages but received no response. She then accused him of ignoring her. Joshua eventually responded but tried to change the subject away from Rachel. After a few messages, Sarah rushed to see him. Meanwhile, Rachel, who had the day off from work, offered to spend time with Joshua, but he refused, saying that he needed to take care of his sister's children. Not believing his excuses, Rachel decides to go to his sister Janet's house to confirm if Joshua is lying. Before leaving, she puts a knife in her pocket. When she arrives, Rachel finds Sarah, Joshua, Janet, and another girl, Gilly, there. Rachel became upset when she saw Sarah's car parked near the house. The girls noticed Rachel passing by the house several times. Rachel then texted Joshua, asking why he was with other women. He responded by telling her to go home, saying that he didn't like her anymore. However, he only said this to reassure Sarah, as he was actually planning on seeing Rachel later. It was almost 11 o'clock, and Sarah knew she needed to go home, but she couldn't bring herself to leave, because Rachel had come downstairs and texted her, wanting to talk. Joshua and Sarah decided it was best to stay in the house and wait for Rachel to leave. Sarah texted her parents to let them know she would be home late and came up with an excuse to avoid explaining Rachel's obsessive behavior. After midnight, Sarah prepared to go home because Rachel was no longer outside. Meanwhile, Janet and Gilly had asked for a ride to McDonald's, and Sarah felt safer going with them. Rachel went to visit her ex-boyfriend Javier. Meanwhile, Ashley, a friend of Sarah's, learned of Rachel's location and quickly informed Sarah. Without hesitation, Sarah, Janet, and Gilly went to where Rachel was. At that moment, Rachel began sending threatening messages, claiming that she would kill both Sarah and Joshua. She was standing on the street when Sarah's car slowed down nearby. Sarah, Janet, and Gilly got out of the car and ran towards Rachel. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Rachel pulled a knife from her pocket and attacked Sarah, stabbing her twice in the chest. Sarah collapsed, bleeding from a severe wound. Despite her condition, she managed to contact Joshua and explain what had happened. Joshua quickly rushed to Sarah's house to inform her parents. When Charles heard about the tragedy, he rushed to the scene. Meanwhile, Rachel's ex-lover Javier was on the phone with an emergency worker and tried to tear his shirt to stop Sarah's bleeding. Rachel went to a bench, sat down, and threw the knife away. Sarah was taken to the hospital. An hour later, at approximately 3 a.m. on April 15, 2009, Sarah died. The investigation was quick. Joshua and several witnesses testified that Rachel attacked Sarah with a knife. When questioned about why she brought a weapon, Rachel claimed it was for self-defense. At that time, she was unaware of the severity of the wounds she had inflicted on Sarah. The officers asked if Sarah was armed, and Rachel answered no. She maintained that she had not meant to harm Sarah and was actually trying to escape from her. After a lengthy interrogation, the police informed Rachel that Sarah had died from her injuries. This news caused Rachel to faint. Police used witness testimonies to piece together what happened. Consequently, Rachel was officially charged with second-degree murder and taken to the county jail with a bond set at $500,000. Despite this serious situation, Rachel did not fully grasp the gravity of her circumstances. This was evident in her phone conversations with friends and family, where she frequently discussed her plans for life after her release, firmly believing that the jury would support her. The trial started on July 20, 2010. The prosecution argued that the intense and hostile dynamics within the love triangle were the motive for Sarah's murder. They highlighted that Rachel had been threatening Sarah on social media prior to the crime, claiming that Rachel's attack was so brutal that the knife blade was bent during the assault. The defense pointed out that Sarah was physically larger than Rachel, emphasizing that Rachel acted in self-defense in a dangerous situation where there were multiple girls present. Witnesses from that night, Janet, Gilly, gave their accounts. Janet and Gilly confirmed that they heard Rachel threaten to kill both Sarah and Joshua. Prosecutors presented a recording of the 911 call from that night. In addition, recordings from 2008 and text messages saved by Sarah were introduced into evidence and played a key role in determining the outcome of the case. The jury, which reached its verdict in just 2 hours, found 20-year-old Rachel Wade guilty of second-degree murder. During her trial, she received a 27-year prison sentence, with the possibility of parole after 20 years for good behavior. Rachel was then sent to a women's correctional facility to serve her sentence. Joshua, who was in Florida, left the state. Some believe he went to New York to visit relatives and avoid media scrutiny, while others think he returned to Florida to reconcile with Aaron. In 2011, Rachel, who was in prison, agreed to an interview. She expressed remorse for the events that occurred and wished she could go back in time and make different choices. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Hannah Graham. Hannah Graham grew up in a loving family that appreciated the little joys of life. Hannah was smart, healthy, and musically gifted. She was a vibrant young woman until she met Jesse Matthew, and her vibrant life took a dark turn. In every photo, from childhood to adolescence, Hannah is smiling. Those who knew her knew of Hannah's great ambition and ambition. Tragically, it seems her bright future was cut short by an unexpected evil that could devastate a life in an instant. On September 12, 2014, at approximately 9:30 p.m., Hannah left her home in Grand Marquette to meet friends. By 10 p.m., they went to FIC restaurant in Charlotte-Swilly. After spending some time together, Hannah later went to a party at the Caden Plaza Apartments on Tina Street. During the party, she told her friends that she was feeling unwell and wanted to leave. One friend offered to walk her home, but Hannah declined, as she lived only a few minutes away from Caden Plaza. Around midnight, Hannah said goodbye to her friends, but instead of going home, she walked in the opposite direction toward the Tempo restaurant. Security cameras on the buildings along her route captured footage of her as she headed to the shopping center on Charlotte Street, where Tempo was located. It was already September 13th, and at 12:56 a.m., the Hannah sent a message to a friend saying she was lost and not feeling well. At that time, Hannah was believed to be very drunk. It was unclear whether she had wandered into a different part of town by accident or due to her intoxication. Meanwhile, 32-year-old Jesse Matthew, a taxi driver, stopped at the Lazy Parrot for a drink. Afterward, he visited several other bars in the city center, where he harassed women. The women later reported that Jesse's behavior was inappropriate and crossed boundaries. Jesse eventually spotted Hannah. He initially walked past her, but then realized this was a great opportunity and decided to turn around and follow her. Surveillance footage captured Hannah wandering the streets, seemingly confused about her surroundings and the time. Jesse approached her, hugged her, and they headed to the Tempo restaurant. Inside, he bought 2 drinks. Witnesses later gave conflicting accounts. Some claimed Hannah was inside the bar area, while others claimed she was outside at a table. There was also no clear evidence that she was served a drink. Hannah's final text message to her friend, saying she was stuck, was sent in the middle of the night, but the meaning behind her words remains unclear. On September 14th, when Hannah's family could not reach her, they became alarmed and reported her missing to the police. Hannah was a person who always notified her family before going out. She was never away for long and always answered the phone. As time went on, her family's worries grew. Meanwhile, the police began searching for Hannah, with state and federal police joining the effort. Hannah's disappearance caused considerable concern in Charlotte Sweeney and the Albert Mall area, especially since there had been previous cases of missing women. Hannah's case quickly attracted public attention and the search for her intensified. Through a detailed investigation and the collection of video footage from numerous city cameras, police were able to piece together a timeline of the events of that tragic night. Hundreds of people gathered at the University of Virginia to support Hannah's family. Many volunteers joined the search, doing everything they could to help Hannah return safely. Hannah had helped others in need, and now it was their turn to help her. Jesse Matthew grew up in a low-income family. He faced constant bullying and humiliation at school, which led to a stutter and difficulties in his studies. Despite these challenges, he persevered and continued his education, eventually earning a full football scholarship to Liberty University in 2002. However, he was soon accused of violence against another student, prompting him to transfer to a different school. Upon entering Christopher Newport University, Jesse could no longer contain his desire, and soon rumors began to spread of a new sexual assault committed by Jesse. The victims remained unknown, having dropped out of school. Jesse made a living by working odd jobs for a while, switching jobs from time to time. In 2005, a young woman was attacked and raped in the Fairfax district while walking home from the store. The attacker threatened to kill her if she resisted. Although she survived the ordeal, she was hospitalized and treated, which included procedures to collect DNA samples. Police gathered evidence from the crime scene to create a DNA profile, but it did not match any suspects in police databases. Due to her fear for her safety, the woman ultimately chose to return to her home country of India. Surprisingly, family and friends described Jesse as a kind and helpful person. Even his ex-girlfriends found him charming and gentle. In fact, Jesse faced multiple sexual assault charges. One of the police officers who was friends with Jesse said that he had a very difficult childhood and was abused during his school years. Jesse was bullied a lot and forced to keep things a secret. Although this was never fully confirmed by his family or friends, Jesse himself stated that he was abused in his early years. This may explain how he went from being a good person to someone with malicious intent. Jesse's father struggled with alcoholism and was often absent from home for long periods of time. In 2006, his father was arrested for breaking the law. Did these experiences shape Jesse's personality and lead him to become a serial killer? On September 19th, police obtained a search warrant for Jesse's apartment. They seized a mobile phone without a SIM card and a pair of men's shorts. DNA tests revealed both Jesse's and Hannah's biological material on these items. A second search warrant was executed for his apartment. And the next day, police announced that while he had not yet been formally charged with Hannah's kidnapping, he was the last person seen with her on the night she disappeared. During this second search, several bags of evidence were collected, including a phone, laundry, bedding, a pillow, clothing, a toothbrush, test tubes of hair, a wallet, and a cigar butt. Police obtained a third search warrant, allowing them to collect a pair of white shorts, a maroon shirt, and a towel with a reddish-brown stain. They also seized an orange Chevrolet Suburban belonging to Jesse. On September 20th, Jesse arrived at the Charlotte police station with Will, requesting an attorney and refusing to answer any questions about Hannah. Afterward, he left the station, got into his car, and sped away. Police pursued him, but he managed to evade capture. A nationwide search for him was initiated. It was later revealed that Jesse had obtained a new driver's license and withdrawn most of his bank funds. Jesse's family has urged him to share any information he has about Hannah with the police. His aunt, Alice Fletcher, has pledged to support Hannah's parents. Many people in Charlotte have joined the search efforts. Additionally, Hannah's college friends have provided significant support to the family. On September 24, Jesse was seen on a beach in Texas. Since his car had been confiscated, he was living in a tent there. A bystander recognized him from a news report and called 911. Jesse was arrested and identified as a suspect in the kidnapping of Hannah. A $100,000 reward was offered for information about Hannah's location. He was taken to the Charlotte Regional Jail and held without bail while the search for Hannah continued. On October 18, a body was discovered on a plot of land on Old Lynch Road in Albemarle County. The site was located behind an abandoned house and surrounded by brush. Police cordoned off the crime scene after the discovery of the body. The sheriff noted that further testing was needed to confirm the identity and expressed gratitude to those searching. A crop top and jeans matching those worn by Hannah were found nearby. A wristwatch was also found, but no underwear, shoes, or cell phone were found. A local resident informed police that on the morning of September 13, he noticed Jesse's car parked on the road behind the house. The car doors were closed, and there was no one inside. It was determined that Jesse was familiar with the area, having worked as a taxi driver nearby for several years. The body was sent to Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Kevin Y. for examination. He conducted an autopsy and concluded that the death resulted from intentional violence, with strangulation being the likely cause. Further tests showed broken noses, and the examiner confirmed that the victim was Hannah Graham. DNA evidence was collected, allowing police to link Jesse to Hannah's murder. Police then also connected him to another crime. This was the January 2010 kidnapping of Morgan Harrington. Her body was discovered on a farm in Albemarle County by the farm owner, who initially mistook them for animal bones. When he realized they were human bones, he quickly contacted the police. Morgan's body and Hannah's body were found just 6 miles apart. The DNA from Morgan's shirt matched that of Jesse Matthew, and surprisingly, it also matched evidence collected in 2005 in Fairfax. On February 10, 2015, Jesse Matthew was formally charged with the murder of Hannah Graham. He faced charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping. Prosecutors sought the death penalty. Attorneys proposed a plea deal that would have reduced his sentence if he confessed to the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington. The victims' families met to discuss the deal, but when they learned that it only carried a 25-year sentence for murder, they rejected it. On March 2, 2016, Jesse Matthew accepted a plea deal in which he confessed to the murders of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. In exchange, the death penalty was removed. Jesse's family had hoped Judge Chad would take into account his troubled upbringing and the sexual abuse he had endured. Despite this, the judge found Jesse Matthew guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping of Morgan Harrington and Hannah Graham. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Jesse's trial lasted less than 3 days. Along with the charges previously mentioned, he was charged with assaulting and raping a girl in Fairfax County in 2005. Jesse Matthew was sentenced to 3 life terms in the Fairfax girl case. As the judge read out his sentence, he emphasized the violent nature of Jesse's attacks. After the verdict, Jesse's mother screamed and had to leave the courtroom. Throughout the trial and sentencing, Jesse remained silent. In December 2020, Jesse was taken from Sac State Prison to Richmond Hospital under police escort, where he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. The terrible crimes he committed had already been resolved, and by December 2022, Jesse Matthew was still alive, with no additional updates on his health at that time. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Courtney Schulhoff. Courtney Schulhoff was born in 1987 in Florida to Stephen and Tracy. While details about her childhood are limited, we do know that her parents divorced when she was young, which was a challenging experience for her. After the divorce, her mother moved out and Courtney stayed with her father. Eventually, Stephen faced significant financial problems, which led to their move. In 2003, Courtney attended Lyman High School. She was a hardworking student at first, but after her parents divorced, her grades began to drop rapidly. She rarely attended school, stopped trying, and became a poor student. Outside of school, Courtney's personality also changed. She began hanging out with a group of friends who were known for bad behavior, which negatively affected her. Tensions between Courtney and her father Stephen escalate, forcing her to temporarily move in with her mother Tracy. However, this arrangement does not last long. Tracy cannot accept the changes in Courtney, so Stephen has no choice but to welcome her back home. Once again, Courtney and her father face unresolved issues, including her difficulties with school. During this time, Courtney and her friends often gather at the racetrack across from her school, where she meets and begins dating a 20-year-old college student named Michael. Michael Morin was a former high school football player who, unlike Courtney, had performed well academically. He received straight A's and was now attending a nearby college. His parents had high expectations for him, but everything changed after he met Courtney. After a few weeks of talking, they began spending all their free time together. Courtney's father, Stephen, was extremely upset about her poor grades, and this only intensified when he learned about her decision to be with Michael. He quickly started blaming Michael for this choice. Their relationship was already strained, and this situation made it worse. Courtney felt that her father didn't want her to be happy. She tried to explain that Michael was a good person, but Stephen refused to see him in that way. He had heard rumors about Michael being involved in car theft and wanted to caution Courtney that no matter what Michael did, he would never earn her father's approval. After a series of arguments, Courtney began to accuse her father of being abusive, and there was some evidence to support her accusations. One day, when Courtney invited some friends over, including Michael, her father Stephen came home earlier than expected, leading to an altercation. While Courtney and her friends were drinking and smoking, Stephen suddenly entered the room. Enraged, he yelled at his daughter for throwing a party without his permission. After a brief argument, Stephen punched Courtney in the face in front of her friends. The situation between Courtney and her father, Stephen, remained tense. Although Courtney had stopped going to school, she refused to find a job and frequently used her father's credit card without asking. She would come home with new clothes and items purchased online. By this time, Stephen's financial situation had worsened, making things even more challenging. For several months, Courtney continued her troubling behavior, often sneaking Michael into their home at night while her father was asleep. Eventually, Stephen prohibited Courtney from seeing her boyfriend, but she ignored his wishes and invited Michael over whenever she pleased. Every conversation between Courtney and her father focused on his harsh criticism of Michael. As the months passed, the situation became increasingly difficult. One day, Stephen checked his bank account and noticed some money missing. He called the police, reporting his daughter to them, apparently to teach her a lesson. After speaking with the police, Courtney returned home, now much more afraid of her father. She began to see him as strict, unkind, and a real threat. She devised a plan, determined to break free from Stephen's control. By the end of 2003, Stephen was in a relationship with a woman named Elaine. During this same time, Courtney was working towards earning her high school diploma while continuing to date Michael. Frustrated by Courtney's father's efforts to control their relationship, the couple decided to run away. However, they faced a major obstacle. Neither had a car or any money. Their plan was to take Michael's father's car and drive to Maryland, where they could ask Courtney's grandparents for financial assistance. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. Michael stole his father's car, but while on the way to Maryland, they changed their minds and turned back home. This decision led to serious consequences for both Michael and Courtney. Michael's parents reported him to the police, and he was charged with car theft, resulting in a 70-day. Furthermore, Michael's parents insisted that he end his relationship with Courtney, believing it to be detrimental to him. This relationship was indeed harmful to both of them. Michael was forced to break up with Courtney, but he refused. As a result, his parents decided to kick him out of the house, leaving him homeless. He began sneaking into Courtney's apartment to sleep there, something he had done occasionally before, but now happened every night. Additionally, Michael dropped out of college, changed his address to Stevens, and put Stevens' phone number on his parole application without Stevens' involvement or permission. Although Michael had nowhere to live, he made no attempt to find a job, which left Courtney to pay all of her father's credit card bills. When Steven attempted to talk to his daughter about her mounting debt, an unforeseen tragedy struck first. On February 10, 2004, Elaine, Steven's new girlfriend, attempted to call him multiple times, but he didn't answer. Concerned that something might be wrong, she decided to go to his house. Between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m., she drove to his place and was surprised by what she saw. Michael, Courtney's boyfriend, was walking down the street with Steven's dog, wearing one of Steven's t-shirts. Feeling uneasy, Elaine got out of her car and approached the front door of Steven's house, where she found Courtney standing by the entrance. Elaine tried to enter, but the door was locked. She asked Courtney where her father was, but Courtney said she didn't know and left without opening the door, taking the key with her. Elaine saw that Steven's truck was still parked in its usual spot, which made her even more worried, so she decided to call the police. When the local police arrived, they quickly obtained a search warrant following Elaine's phone call. They entered the house through the back door and began their search, uncovering a horrific scene. Inside Steven's room, they found blood splatter on the walls. The most shocking discovery was Steven's body in a plastic trash can. He had a severed ear and a disfigured face. It was clear that the perpetrator didn't bother to hide their actions. Additionally, the police found several bank statements on the dining room table, many of them circled in pen. Meanwhile, Courtney was missing. Elaine learned of the altercation between Steven, his daughter, and her boyfriend, so the police quickly began a search. The police found Michael in the restroom of the mall across the street from Steven's house. As Elaine said, he was wearing one of Steven's t-shirts and had Steven's wallet, car keys, and credit cards in his possession. The police took Michael in for questioning. After leaving her father's apartment earlier that day, Courtney simply went to her mother's house, where her mother made her turn herself in. During questioning, Michael initially insisted that he knew nothing about the murder. Michael claimed that after being kicked out of the house, he had been living in Courtney's closet. One day, when Steven returned home, Courtney woke Michael up and told him that her father had found out he was staying with them. When he asked Courtney why, she said she would explain later and asked him to walk the dog, which he did. Michael ran to the mall because he was worried that Steven would find out he was near his home. However, after the police informed him of Steven's death, his story changed dramatically. He began to cry and said that after Steven tried to confront Courtney about the missing money on his credit card, she asked Michael to kill Steven and he agreed. His story shifts from being unaware of the death to saying he was asked to kill Steven. Courtney's interrogation was also unproductive. She gave two different statements. In her first interrogation, she blamed Michael entirely, claiming she had no knowledge of her father's death until he informed her. In a later confession, however, she revealed much more information to police. Courtney maintained that the murder was Michael's idea and admitted to helping him by removing Stephen's dog from the room before the incident and placing the bat by the bedroom door. She said she heard everything while Michael killed her father. But by the end of the trial in September 2006, her story had changed dramatically. Courtney was convicted of murder. When asked if she had any final statements, she maintained her innocence throughout the trial but stated that she wanted to publicly acknowledge that Michael Morin did not kill her father. She took full responsibility and agreed to her sentence. This shocking admission took everyone in the courtroom by surprise. However, Courtney's stance changed less than a year later. At Michael's trial in April 2007, where he faced the death penalty if convicted, Courtney did not repeat her previous statement that she was solely responsible for the crime and that Michael had nothing to do with it. Ultimately, Michael Morin was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. In 2017, Courtney Schulhoff was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Although both men involved were punished, the exact details of the case remain unclear. It was confirmed that Stephen was killed with a baseball bat. But it is still unclear which of the two did the killing. Courtney did not confess to killing her father, but Michael did.